Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to give you a little bit of a background on where I've been and what's been going on. The last video I made, I'm pretty sure it was the delivery 37-week video. And a lot has gone on, and I know it's been a while. But I had the baby, obviously. And there's a lot to tell y'all, so just stay tuned. First off, here's Jensen Alexander. He was 6 pounds 6 ounces. He was born 37 weeks and 1 day. He was born with Down syndrome, which would also be known as Trisomy 21. We initially knew the first time I held him, I just knew. I didn't say anything to my husband. I didn't say anything to the nurses or the doctor or anybody because he was doing everything that he was supposed to do. So I just kind of I thought it in my head and I felt it in my heart, but I just didn't say anything. And mind you, we had ultrasound up until 31 weeks and no signs were in the ultrasound, no signs were in the testing that they did for me. So we had no idea, which it wouldn't have made a difference. You know, we wouldn't have done what other people could do. You know, that's just our choice. We are pro-life, and we wouldn't have changed our mind about anything. It was just people thought that we knew and we just didn't know. We really didn't know. So basically what happened was the doctor came in the next day after he was born. They all do this, but they check over the baby and they just give him a good weighing and everything that they need to do. And the doctor says to me, you know, he's checking his hands and his feet and he's just checking everywhere. Which they did that with my other child also. I don't really remember the first one, and it was at a different hospital. But he looks at me and he says, your son has a few different features, and some people have these features, but if you have more than 3, it leads us to believe that they might have trisomy 21, which is also known as Down syndrome. That's what he says to me. And he just paused, and I said, okay. I said, I think I already knew this. I said there was nothing in the testing and they didn't see anything in the ultrasound. So how can you tell? And he just said, he showed us his feet, which I'll give y'all a little show. I guess in trisomy 21 people, they have typically a bigger space in between their toes, the big toe and the middle toe, and the bone on the bottom has a space in between it. He said with your son, it's not as prominent as it is in a lot of other kids, but we have noticed it. I guess the nurses had noticed and they just didn't say anything. They wait for the doctor to talk to you. He also said that in his hand he has a line. We all have lines, but he has a line that goes straight across the crease right there in his cute little hand. It goes straight across. That's another one of the features. He said his I guess they call them hoofed eyes, but he also said that that it could be run in the family. So, like, just because somebody has hooked eyes like that, or like a flat nose bridge right here, doesn't mean that they have it. It's just another common symptom that, or a common characteristic of people with trisomy 21. And I'll show you his, because my husband is Russian and his dad has them, his brother has them. He had them when he was born and when he was little, but it's not very prominent now. But here's his little Jensen. So basically those were the 3 signs to, I guess, the nurses and everybody that were like the big ones. The other thing was he had these tiny little dots, and he doesn't have them anymore, so I can't really show you, but he had these tiny red dots, and it wasn't a lot of them. It didn't look like a rash or anything crazy like that. But they noticed them. And so he said to me, and do you see these rat? And I remember him pressing on them before he said anything. He would touch them, and I guess they wouldn't go away. And usually if it's a rash or something, or even I guess a pimple, it kind of like the redness will deplete from your skin, and it obviously comes back, but when you press it, it goes away. Well, these weren't doing that. They were staying red, and that was an alarm to him that there was something going on with his blood. And which is another thing that can happen with trisomy 21 people or babies. They can have their platelet count low, and that just basically is what clots our blood. If you get a cut, your blood clots up by pressing it or whatever, even on its own, and that's what makes you stop bleeding from your cut. Well, in his case, those red dots were an indication that his platelets were low. So they did a platelet test. It came back, I guess he explained it to me, that we're supposed to have like 150,000 count of platelets. The lowest you can have is, I want to say he said 30. And he had 56 was his number. So his platelets were low, and which would mean, let's say it didn't go up. They said that it could go up, but it could stay the same. It would never drop, is what he told me. He said that, we were gonna, this was his 24-hour check also. So, I mean, he was still little. They checked his blood for the 24 hours. And that was his count. So he said, there's a good chance it could go up. We just want to check him and make sure, because if he got a cut, or let's say anything, if he had to have surgery even, he would have a blood problem. He would lose blood, and they would have a problem stopping the blood from gushing out, I mean, I'm sorry about the graphic words, but this is what it is. So that was another common thing. The other thing was he wanted to check the heart, because trisomy 21 people also have heart problems, heart murmurs, holes in their heart, different things can go on with their heart. So they tested for that, and on his part of it, he had 4 different holes. He said some of them might close up on their own. There was some that he had that there was one that every baby has, just everybody, and it usually closes on its own within the 24 hours. So they did the echo, which is just an ultrasound of your heart, just like when you're pregnant and you go in and they squirt the little thing with the gel and they move it all over your belly. That's exactly what they did. It was just on his heart instead of his belly, and that's how they're able to see everything that way. Now, I went in for ultrasounds in utero. They looked and they checked his heart. They said his heart was fine. I mean, I've seen video in front of me before he was born. His heart was fine. So we were really confused of how it kind of like works. I still don't really know, but they just basically chucked it down to, you know, the heart is so little that if you don't do a test on him specifically to see him, then you can't see all the chambers and everything when he's in utero. And so that makes sense. But basically where we go from here is we were just kind of watching the blood count. We were watching the heart. His oxygen was good, so we didn't have to go to the NICU. We just stayed in the hospital like our 3 days that we were doing. And if his blood levels were still low, then they weren't going to let us leave, obviously. But like I said, his oxygen was fine, so they just kept him in the hospital. So they actually, you know, they take his blood. They would do a heel stick, which they stick his heel and then they squeeze it to get the blood out. But that's not as accurate as his vein. So they were taking blood from the vein because they wanted the exact count number. They had it clotted one time that they did it, and I was pissed because then they had to take it from his vein again, and it was just a mess. You know, their veins are so little that... Hi, baby. Hi, baby. It's okay. Say hi. Their veins are so little that it's hard for them to take it from them. I mean, it's hard for them to get it from me sometimes. So you can imagine, it was painful. Back to the trisomy 21. They also have problems a lot of the times with sucking. You know, latching on, sucking completely at all. Like, some have to have the feeding tubes. Well, in his case, he did not have to have a feeding tube. His suction is perfect. He was nursing right away. You know, the only thing is since he was borderline preemie, he did have a lot of problems with waking himself up, which preemie babies. They call them the good pretenders or something like that, because they pretend that they're eating and they're not, you know, and they don't wake themselves up every 2 to 3 hours to feed, you know. So basically I would have to wake him up to get him on his feeding schedule, and he really wouldn't wake up. I mean, it was kind of like he was weak, but I would just make sure I was on it. I was waking him up sometimes every hour and a half. You know, I wanted some sleep too, but I really was just trying to get him up feeding. And he was eating. He was eating good. I was nursing, and he was doing his bowel movements. He was urinating. He was doing the whole 9 yards. Say hi. So he really was doing everything that a typical newborn would do. And that was great, you know. So long story short, they didn't admit him to the NICU. They just took me off the room. Basically, I was still in the hospital room, but they kind of like discharged me, and he wasn't discharged. And they said if I leave the hospital, obviously I wouldn't be able to go back in there. It would be his room and not my room anymore. But they basically just didn't want to keep giving me medicine, or like if I called to get me that or get me food, or, you know, they didn't want to take care of me anymore because I had a vaginal delivery and it was fine, you know, nothing happened. I didn't even tear, you know, I looked good. So they kept me in the room though, so I could do everything with him, which was nice. That was nice. It also was cheaper. Sorry, I'm going to put him down. Hold on. So after he was in there 48 hours, they checked him again. His blood platelet count went up to about 130,000 is what he told me. So it wasn't where you know, ours would typically be, but it was going up, so it led him to believe that it might still go up, and it was safe enough for him to leave the hospital. They gave me the option to discharge after 48 hours. They actually wanted it to be a little bit before, and I told them I wanted 48 hours. Exactly 48 hours or more, because of what I went through with my last son. That's a whole nother video. If y'all want to hear that, that's my I would believe he's like 18 months now. I'd have to do like an update on him. He's cray. But I wanted 48 hours or more because I just wanted to make sure that nothing was going to go crazy when we took him home, or something was going to show up different, you know, the mommy worries. But, you know, after that time, he was fine. His platelets went up. He was doing good. He was eating. He was doing his bowel movements, peeing, pooping, doing the whole 9 yards. So they made us a cardiologist appointment, and we have to go to that like 2 days after we left the hospital. This was a weekend. He was born May 23rd, 2018. And we got out on that weekend. It was a holiday weekend. It was like Labor Day or something. And it's just been chaos since. 3 boys, 2 under 2. And mommy is trying to survive. No, I'm kidding. No, it's been easier than I thought, but like, he's a good baby. He's a really good baby. We had to get him a little bed. And if y'all want to see a video on this, this is like a DocuTalk dupe, then I can make a video on that if you'd like. We love it. He really, really loves it, and it just makes him feel secure. It makes me feel secure. You know, he's got a little extra padding and things, so he's a good boy. He's a good baby. I plan on trying to really get back on here. You know, it's been crazy, and like, my 4-year-old needs my attention more than the babies do. So he's going to be starting school soon, just for the morning. He's doing pre-K. I can do a video on that also. Just like and subscribe, and just comment down, helping mama out. Comment below some videos you would like to do, because that does like put a little fire into my behind to do them if y'all want to see them. Thanks for watching. Bye.